What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the PSVR 2 sales, the news going around online that they're basically very, very much down and not in line with what Sony wants them to be, and I want to talk about it, but that is the short of it. So the sales of the system, I believe, are somewhere around like 274,000, which, I mean, that's a lot of systems. That's a lot of people. If you think about, I mean, for me, if I got 274,000 views, right, that's a big number. But for a company that wants this thing to take off, and the projections or what they wanted, right, was 2 million. Now, I don't remember what kind of like timeline that is. I don't think they necessarily wanted 2 million in the first 2 months, but they do want it in general. This thing's not going to reach it. I think that's kind of well known. It's not heading that way. There's analysts out there that are talking that you're going to need to bring the price down. The price is a gigantic factor. I'll talk about that in a second. But that's what analysts are saying, is the price is too high. You got to bring the thing down. Otherwise, this is going to be a full-blown disaster for Sony. On one side, I want to say this. On one side, I feel bad because this very much, I mean, this kind of reminds me of like the PS Vita, which was a handheld console that I love to death. I supported it. I bought it. And the fans are the things that let that system down. I mean, in all honesty, I think the PS Vita was fantastic and it deserved an audience. I don't know if PSVR or PSVR 2 necessarily deserve any kind of audience, or like 2 million, let's say, over the first couple months or even the first year. It's a little bit different, but I get the same sense because I mean, history repeats itself, and things follow in the same kind of way where if this system doesn't do well, right? So it's at, say, 270, we'll make it an even number, even though I think it's 274. It's that right now. I mean, even if this thing can hit maybe, what, 500,000, 500,000 within the first 6 to 12 months. Well, number one, that is very much below what Sony had wanted, but also you got to imagine when you're making deals, when you're out there and you're talking to different companies and you're saying, hey, make games for the PSVR 2, well, they're only going to do it if they know that people are going to buy it. Now, you always take chances, right, because nothing's necessarily a guarantee, but you can look at the numbers and say, well, if there's only 500,000, we thought there would maybe be 2, 2.5, 3. Well, like, there's less people that are going to buy our games immediately. There's less people out there that even have a shot. And then you know that not every player, even some of the biggest or the biggest you'd maybe imagine right now on PSVR 2 is what, Horizon, you probably would think Call of the Mountain, right, being the biggest one. There's no guarantee that in fact, there's no way that every person in that 274,000 group bought it. It may be 10%. Now, for a thing like this, it's probably higher. It's probably like 20, 30, 40% of the people that have the device that are getting that game, just because it's a little bit different. But what does that do, I guess? That affects long term. Now you're going to have less partnerships. You have less people working on it. That's what reminds me so much of the Vita. That's really what happened with the Vita. Is I think they had a pretty good launch. I think they had games. I think the Vita just historically does have some really good games. But at the end of the day, after the first year or so, companies look at it and say, not enough people are doing this, so we're not going to, help you. We're not going to make games for it. We're not going to sell it. We're going to lose our jobs, so we're not doing it. And that obviously is like a trickle-down effect, and it hurts the system. So I see the same thing for PSVR 2. So in my opinion, what's the problem? Well, there's a couple of problems. I think the analysts are right. I think the system is too high. I know we've talked about it many times. I've made videos on Podcast Now. I've made videos here on Podcast Now Plus. I've talked about understanding. I think the technology does warrant the price, and I want it. I mean, I've been very open with that. I do not have it. I do not want it for this price. I'm unwilling. I'm not going to spend the money on this device, at the price point it's at right now. But I do want it. I believe in the technology. I believe that this is one of the better ones. I'm excited to one day put the thing on. And I have a PSVR 1. I bought it in the first month that it came out. So I do want it. It's too much. It's just flat out too much. I get the technology warrants it, but that's kind of separate. Like, that's one side of it, I suppose. Money's not doing too great across the world, right? You could argue if we're in a recession right now or if we're about to be in one, but no matter what, people are losing their jobs. And this is actually the analyst that talked about reducing the price of the PSVR 2. Same analyst in the same article talked about that. People losing their jobs. Everything is going up in price. You're making less money, kind of like generally with the situations. So all this stuff being said, why would you go to a VR thing. You could argue, I mean, and this is a thing that happens with money problems. Entertainment is one of the first things, I believe, and I think evidence would kind of back it up. Entertainment is one of the first things that suffer. What do you do when you're trying to save a quick dollar? You cancel subscription services. You cancel this. You cancel that. You're canceling kind of like pleasure, easy pleasure. That's the first thing you go to. You go to the non-essentials. A headset that brings you into a VR world is not essential, right? If anything, you're going to get maybe you don't even have the PS5. That's, of course, an argument. You don't have the PS5. If you buy the PS5 and the PSVR 2, you're already over $1,000, or you're pretty darn close. Then you got to buy the games, and that's even more money, right? People don't have the money. People, I think, are kind of unwilling to do it. It's kind of an outside thing. That's always the issue with any of these like systems they've done in general. I would argue even the PS Vita. Handhelds are extremely popular, but Nintendo really has, that market. You got to do something very like bold, very different if you want to kind of enter that arena, but it's also kind of what you're known for. So like PlayStation is known for PlayStation consoles, PS3, PS4, PS2, obviously, all of them, okay? That's what it's known for. When you try to branch it out into accessories, I'm not saying you can't, but if we're coming up with reasons why this thing is failing, people don't know PlayStation for their VR headset, right? People don't really care. In the large scheme of things, people absolutely do not care. I can't imagine this gets any better. In fact, I kind of think it's going to get worse for the reasons I've already said. I don't see people's wallets filling up over the next little while. In fact, I actually think it's going to get so much worse. So people are going to be even less willing to spend money. This system, like what, if you bring it down even 50 to $100, I just think it's too expensive as an accessory. Again, not talking about the technology. I just think people are unwilling to do it. And I'm one of them. So I kind of understand that, right? Also, you're going to have that trickle down effect. The longer this thing doesn't do well, unless they turn it around, but the longer it goes, the more companies aren't going to support it, which maybe means the best kind of things we're getting for this device are going to be up front. And there's really no systems. I mean, that's another thing with the Vita, with PlayStation consoles. What do they need? They need something to sell the system. Now, for the PSVR 2, it's more of the technology. It kind of always has been for PSVR 1 and PSVR 2. It's more of the technology of this device. And I mean, it is futuristic. It is awesome. I mean, well, I can't necessarily speak for this one. I can speak for the PSVR 1. It's cool, and I am a believer in that kind of technology. I don't think it would be my primary place to play a game ever, period. I'm more of like a watch it on TV kind of person, not right in front of my face, but I do understand it. I get it. But at the same time, if you're not going to have these killer like system sellers, well, no one's going to get it. And there really isn't one. Like Horizon is really not going to be one that's going to sell it. A lot of these are not going to be games that actually sell it. The thing that sells it is the technology, but then you attach everything else that there really aren't any killer games, and you could argue if you need that or not. I think you kind of do. The price is too high for what most people would like consider a reasonable price. Price is too high. People don't have the money to do this. People may not even have the PS5 yet. I mean, that's just something I skim over, but that is important. All those factors, it's not surprising. It's not surprising this thing isn't doing well. And I'm not here to like wish for its quick death or wish for a death period. I want it to succeed, but I don't think it's going to be flat out honest with you. I think maybe it kind of rebounds like a year or two from now. But like I said, I don't think in the short term things are going to get any better with like people's wallet. So I would argue the biggest factor of why people aren't buying it, price, and just they don't want to spend the money on something like this, that's going to get worse over the next like year or two. It's not going to get better. And that's like the main factor, at least to me. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're all subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.